The night was darker than usual. A cold wind howled through the silent streets, wrapping around the dim streetlights like an invisible force whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Inside a tiny, cluttered apartment, Ryan sat hunched over a stack of books, his hands gripping the edges of his worn-out desk. The room smelled of old paper and cold coffee, his constant companions for the past 3 years. For as long as he could remember, Ryan had been overlooked, laughed at, betrayed. He was a quiet kid in school, the one they pushed aside, the one they whispered about behind his back. He won't make it. He's wasting his time. Look at him. He thinks he's better than us. The words used to sting, used to bury themselves deep in his chest like tiny shards of glass. But not anymore. Tonight, he was done being the underdog. Ryan had spent years being ridiculed, by friends who abandoned him when he needed them, by teachers who dismissed his dreams as foolish, by a society that valued shortcuts over hard work. But he had learned something along the way. Success is not given. It's not handed out to the loudest voices or the most privileged few. It's earned in silence, through relentless dedication. And Ryan had been silent for far too long. The clock struck midnight, yet sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. He had built his dreams in the shadows while the rest of the world mocked him. Every rejection, every insult had become fuel. Every failure had carved him into something sharper, something unbreakable. As he flipped through the last few pages of his book, his mind traveled back to the moment that changed everything. It was his last year of high school when his so-called friends played the ultimate betrayal. They had convinced him to trust them, only to turn their backs when he needed them most. He had saved every penny to apply for a scholarship, his only chance to escape the suffocating small town. But on the day of submission, his application was mysteriously missing, stolen, destroyed. He never confronted them. He never fought back. He simply walked away, their laughter ringing in his ears. But deep inside, a fire had ignited. They thought they had won, but they had only created a monster. Ryan took a deep breath, snapping back to the present. His fingers trembled, not with fear, but with anticipation. His moment was coming. After years of struggle, of sacrifice, of nights spent awake when the world was asleep, he had done it. Tomorrow, he would step onto a stage, not as the quiet boy they once dismissed, but as the CEO of his own company. The same people who had laughed at him would be in the audience, unknowingly invited by a mutual friend. The ones who betrayed him, they would see his name everywhere. Ryan Carter, guest speaker, entrepreneur, visionary. The thought sent chills down his spine, not out of revenge, but out of justice, because success is the best payback. And he was about to leave them all behind. The morning arrived with an eerie stillness. The city skyline shimmered under the golden embrace of dawn, yet Ryan's mind was fixed on only one thing, the moment he had been waiting for. Today wasn't just another day. Today was the day he proved them all wrong. As he stepped out of his apartment, a familiar unease settled in his chest. It wasn't fear. No, fear had abandoned him long ago. This was something else. A silent realization that after today, there would be no going back. The venue was grand, towering glass walls reflecting the sun's glory, velvet carpets leading to the entrance, and inside, an audience filled with some of the most influential names in industry. And yet, amongst them, hidden between unfamiliar faces, were ghosts of his past, his former classmates, his so-called friends, the ones who had laughed, mocked, and betrayed. They didn't recognize him at first. Why would they? The Ryan they knew was long gone, buried beneath years of sleepless nights and unwavering determination. But as whispers began to ripple through the room, their expressions shifted. Eyes widened, jaws tightened. They knew the boy they had left behind had returned, but not as their equal, as their superior. Ryan stood backstage, his heart steady. He had envisioned this moment for years, but now that it was here, revenge no longer mattered. He had already won. Success had done what anger never could. It had silenced his enemies. The host introduced him, and as he walked onto the stage, the applause thundered through the room. Yet his eyes weren't on the cheering crowd. They were on them. He took a deep breath and spoke. I was once told I wouldn't make it. that my dreams were too big, my ambitions too unrealistic. I was laughed at, betrayed, and left behind. But here's the truth. Pain is a gift. Betrayal is a lesson. And rejection is the greatest motivation. The room fell silent. I didn't fight back with words. I didn't seek revenge. I chose a different path. I worked in silence, built in the shadows, and today I stand before you, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. A heavy stillness filled the air. His old classmates sat frozen, their faces pale. No words, no excuses, just silence. Ryan smiled. He had already left them behind, and he was never looking back. The applause faded, but the weight of his words still hung in the air. Ryan stepped down from the stage, his mind steady, his heart calm. He had done what he came to do. Not to humiliate, not to seek revenge, but to stand tall. As he walked through the crowd, familiar faces avoided his gaze. The same people who once dismissed him now fidgeted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Others sat frozen, stunned into silence. And then a voice called out, "Ryan." He turned. It was Ethan, the one who had led the betrayal, the one who had stolen his scholarship application, the ringleader of his downfall all those years ago. Ryan met his eyes. The arrogance that once defined Ethan was gone, replaced by something else. Regret. "Hey, man." Ethan forced a chuckle. "That was impressive. I mean, really, you've come a long way." Ryan remained silent. He could hear the unspoken words behind Ethan's casual tone. "I didn't expect this. I thought you'd stay behind." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Look, about the past, we were kids, you know? It wasn't personal. Just stupid fun." Ryan let the words hang for a moment before speaking. "Maybe it wasn't personal to you," he said quietly, "but it was personal to me." Ethan swallowed hard. "I didn't think you'd actually," he stopped himself. "I mean, I didn't expect you to succeed." Ryan finished for him. Ethan looked away. Ryan exhaled, feeling no anger, no bitterness, only clarity. "I don't need an apology," he said, "and I don't need closure, because I already moved on." Ethan's mouth opened as if to say something, but nothing came out. Ryan didn't wait. He turned and walked away, leaving behind a ghost of his past. As he stepped outside into the crisp evening air, he felt something shift within him. He had spent years proving them wrong, but in the end, it was never about them. It was about him. Success had already given him the greatest revenge, freedom. And for the first time in years, Ryan was truly free.